Good afternoon and welcome to our regular council meeting for October 23rd, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. First item on the agenda is our land acknowledgement under agenda item 1.1. The town of Coaldale acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coaldale is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Second item on the agenda under agenda item 1.2 is conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Are there any in the room this afternoon? None declared. Thank you. Agenda item 2.1, acceptance of the agenda for the regular council meeting October 23rd, 2023. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? See none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting agenda for October 23rd, 2023 as presented? Councillor Pickering. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3.1, the regular council meeting minutes from October the 11th, 2023. Were there any error or omissions in the agenda? Councillor Reis.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Under agenda item 7.1, the recorded votes, I do believe that Mayor Van Rijn voted in favor of borrowing bylaw 877-B-09-23.
That's correct, I did. In that particular case, they have myself and Deputy Mayor Beekman reversed on that one. So we'll make note of that and our municipal clerk will fix that. Any other questions, concerns about the minutes? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to that point, I noticed that as well. It doesn't change the final vote or decision.
It was still carried, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the agenda item 6.1. We have our senior planner, Hailey Winder, presenting on Access Coaldale update, prioritization exercise. Hailey, whenever you're settled in, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. This report is primarily to provide Council with information and an update on Access Coaldale. Access Coaldale is a community group that was founded in December of 2020. The mission of the group is to improve the overall accessibility throughout the town of Coaldale. In 2021, Access Coaldale completed an accessibility audit of town-owned and or operated buildings. The audit identified various features within those buildings that may benefit from upgrades or renovations in order to improve accessibility. In 2022, Council approved the Access Coaldale Accessibility Fund as part of the 2023 to 2025 operating budget. In order to determine how to allocate these funds, the group conducted a prioritization exercise that ranked the accessibility improvements identified within the audit report in terms of overall importance with consideration for the following factors: location importance, improved functionality, promotes independence, convenience versus necessity, and improves the overall health and or safety of the building. Based on the individual ranking of each of the features listed in the audit report and group discussions, the following accessibility projects were proposed by the group. For 2023, the Community Center Interior Access was identified as number 1, Coaldale Pool Main Entrance as number 2, and the Coaldale Library Emergency Exits. In total, those improvements listed would be less than the $20,000 allocated in the operating budget. However, I would note that these estimates for costs were calculated in 2021, and that has not accounted for inflation and those various changes in costs, so it might need to be reassessed. For 2024, the curling club entrance through the community center was identified. The Coaldale pool change rooms and change tables were also identified, and the Coaldale pool emergency exits were all listed as improvements for 2024. And finally, for 2025, the group had discussed converting some washrooms within the curling club to universal washrooms. This doesn't have a price associated with it within the audit report. So within the time from now until 2025, we will be working on putting together a budget that falls within that $20,000 to address universal washrooms for the curling club. Administration is now respectfully requested, administration respectfully requests that council accept the prioritization exercise summary results as information and to accept the prioritization list of improvements for 2023, 2024, and 2025. I can take questions at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Hailey. I'll open up to members of council if there's any questions, comments on her report. Go ahead, Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. Is the 2023 projects completed?
Thank you, Councillor Avery. The 2023 projects have not been completed. This is a project that I had adopted when I started on at the town of Coaldale, and we are just getting to the finalized prioritization exercise. These are easy fixes, they're quick fixes. For example, the interior access of the community center is a universal push button, so that can be installed very easily. As well as the Coaldale pool and main entrance, again, that would be a universal access button. We actually do recommend that those projects be undertaken within the next few months because it's easier to do those projects, especially at the pool going into the winter seasons when the pool is no longer being used. So it is a bit of a tight time frame, but after speaking with our operations and facilities personnel, we believe that this could be achievable within the 2023 year.
And then as a follow-up, when we were in Edmonton, there was a presentation done by a young lady with regards to accessibility and how can we monitor it? Some of the examples she used was the accessible washrooms and individuals going in there and then those in wheelchairs having no ability because we don't have one stall for accessibility. It's kind of like our new building here. So how can we monitor that to make sure that it is accessible when those individuals need them?
Thank you for that question. If I understand correctly, this group has been established in order to continually monitor. So the intention of the group is to assess the buildings as is and determine potential renovations or upgrades for that purpose. They also do have the ability to kind of assess infrastructure and facilities that are currently operational or that are proposed. They're very versatile or very varied group of individuals with various levels of accessibility, and they have great opinions and good input on how to improve accessibility, especially with input on the new recreation center. I know that there was some discussion with the group on how to improve the washroom and change room situation and increase access, not only for in terms of accessibility, but in terms of number of people with accessibility issues.
Thank you. Any further questions for Hailey? Councillor Reis.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn, through to Hailey. So I guess the dog park upgrades are all completed for the accessibility thing, right?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe that was undertaken outside of the budget for the Access Coaldale Accessibility Fund, already kind of allocated the year before. This was listed as an improvement area within the audit exercise. It wasn't as highly ranked as some of these smaller ones, but it has been addressed.
Thank you. Just looking here, I noticed that most of this stuff here has already been completed anyhow, so that's why I asked. Thank you.
Yep.
And just to follow up on your question too, coming as part of the budget cycle will be the accessible ramp going down into the dog park. We'll be talking about that as part of the budget process. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Hailey, for your fully robust presentation here. I read through the whole thing, and even though some of it is already improved, I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to uncover and develop moving forward. And so my question to you would be, there will be annual upgrades required every year to get to partial completion of all the needed changes. So what I would suggest is same thing that we did with our parks and upgrading our playground equipment, and that was very methodical. And so over 10 years or plus, we were able to upgrade all our outdoor play parks. And I think in the same vein, we can start, picking away at our public facilities in the same manner, is picking at the most important, the critical ones as you see are most needed, and develop from there. I noticed in your in the report here as well that some of the improvements, and now I see that Russ Tanner is here. Some of the improvements that you're suggesting, for example, these power doors, could they, if you were to install them now, say at the rink, would they be eligible to be reused in a future build out or building requirement? With that, so my question is that if you were to make an improvement of, say, power doors at the rink, could they be used for a future building or renovation that might be needed?
You might need to. Oh, there we go. Thank you for the question. If I understand it correctly, what you're asking is if we're to put new power doors on at the rink, would the existing doors we take out be usable elsewhere? Is that?
No, my question is that it's kind of relative to that, but my question is, new doors, for example, so new upgrades, new improvements, would they be able to be adjusted or fitted into a new building?
The answer is yes. You're able to use equipment at any point in time. I guess you just have to look at the lifespan, the warranties that are on it and things like that. But any piece of equipment installed in any facility certainly could be reused at a new facility.
Thank you. That makes me more happy, mainly because any expenses we incur now, certainly we can reflect that into the future. My final question to Hailey is more about the. I noticed in your report about sidewalks, for example, and of course need to improve sidewalks for accessibility, especially at intersections. And I think, are there some things that we can do in the meantime that don't require a budget investment to upgrade? For example, I noticed there's a picture in here of a sidewalk that had grass growing over it. And just to that, I received a complaint, which I passed on to Clayton and the mayor a couple of weeks ago, from a resident who was concerned about grass growing over the sidewalk, and it's about 6 inches wide. So what happens is that the sidewalk or the grass builds up mostly from silt and, build up over the years. And then, of course, as it builds up, it builds out. So consequently, about, a quarter of the sidewalk is covered in grass. So the concern from the resident is about navigating these sidewalks where it's really narrow or has become narrow because of grass and silt that's built up. Is there any possibility that we could reflect the work that's being done throughout the summer, for example, that doesn't require a budget upgrade or a budget requirement for the accessibility on something like that?
Thank you for that question. As a matter of fact, this particular group, Access Coaldale, is highly motivated. They have been looking into getting community grants from different levels of government, including provincial and federal funds, in order to do exactly that, is to carry on that work. We have a particular individual who would like to do a GIS-related project in identifying problem areas on sidewalks, potential bylaw infractions, overhanging trees, and how that could interfere with pedestrian movement. So there are a lot of projects that they are engaged in, and they are actively looking for funding outside of the municipal purview. So it all depends on if the group is able to access those funds. But I do say that in my experience with this group, they are very keen on working throughout the year outside of the strict budget of council allocation.
Thank you, Hailey, and that concludes my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Chapin. Any further questions for our presenter? Seeing none, I'm looking for two motions. First one is that council accepts the Access Coaldale Prioritization Exercise Summary results as information. Councillor Beekman, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second motion is that council accepts the prioritized list of improvements for 2023, 2024, and 2025 as presented. Councillor Chapin, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Hailey, pass on our appreciation to your team members. You guys are doing an excellent job. Keep it up. Thank you. Okay, I just need to back up to adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Reis brought up that correction that needed to be done. So I need a motion to adopt the previous minutes as amended. Councillor Reis, you want to do that? Yeah. Thank you. And Councillor Chapin, you want to second that? Okay. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, carried. Backing up now to, I should actually say moving ahead to new business, swearing in of our Deputy Mayor, Jordan Saylor. And we have our Staff Sergeant Mike Numan in attendance to perform that ceremony. And then right after the swearing in, our Staff Sergeant is going to be giving us a quarterly report for April 1st to June 30th. So if I could get Councillor Saylor to come up there by the Staff Sergeant, please.
So, Mr. Saylor, this is an official oath. I'll get you to repeat after me. Okay, hand on the Bible. I, Jordan Saylor,
I, Jordan Saylor,
swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability
swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability
execute according to law the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Coaldale.
execute according to law the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Coaldale.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So sworn.
Let's get you to sign here. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor Saylor. Moving on to agenda item 8.2, we have the R.C.M.P. quarterly report from April 1st to June 30th. And again, we have our Staff Sergeant, Mike Numan, presenting. Mike, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff that are present. I apologize for the delay in this reporting. Lana and myself were unable to find a date that worked sooner than this, and we had some other events going on. So I should be back here in the next month or so for the next quarterly report as well. But having said that, I would presume that all of you had a chance to look at this way back in August when it was sent out. If you're looking at statistics, it's I'm looking at the municipal detachment crime stats. It's a 2-page document. It looks like this. That's what I'm looking at first. These numbers, again, are trending pretty even. There's no real great increases, and there is a few decreases. Bearing in mind that this was from April till June, I think the summer months will see a bit of a spike in some of those statistics for the next quarterly report. So nothing that jumps out at me at all. We're pretty much on trend from 2022 to 2023 for numbers. The only thing that we're seeing that's more keeping us a little more busy is the common police activities on the bottom of the last page. 911 calls, false 911 calls, abandoned 911 calls, and suspicious people. And I think that's goes hand in hand with some of the activities that we're seeing around the town with property and that type of thing. People are maybe calling a little bit more frequently. So that's what we'd like to see as well. On the 10-page municipal policing report that I prepared and sent out, it really just gives an overview of kind of our activities, not just for this detachment area, the town of Coaldale, but also the other parts of the detachment as well. We have a plan that we follow that I spoke about last week, and in that we try and achieve our quarterly updates and targets each quarter. So some highlights for the town of Coaldale for that quarter. I did take part in several to discuss bike rodeo planning, attend the bike rodeo, did some actually, I think I got a tour of the new town hall here and did some quarterly reporting. We are still meeting every month with Lethbridge Police and all the surrounding detachments and other police agencies to try and work together on our crime reduction initiatives and some targeting of prolific offenders, which it's been quite positive, and we'll continue to do that. Our 3 priorities for this year, as I had discussed earlier, were traffic safety, police community relations, and intelligence-led policing, so crime prevention and crime reduction. All those 3 are going very well. We actually had 33 community events and functions that we attended for the first quarter, and that's not just for the town of Coaldale, but that's for all of our communities. And I think that's, for an attachment our size, that's really good for a quarter. And we had 11 in Picture Butte, just for your information as well. So we are busy trying to do, you know, the policing that needs to be done, plus being interactive in our communities, which our folks are doing a good job of, for sure. The statistics on page 6, so it basically gives you a snapshot of that quarter, April to June 2022 to 2023, excuse me. Again, the numbers are trending down from the previous year, and I believe that those numbers may go up a little bit more for the summer. I just know that we were busy, and it seems to have continued into September and October. Hopefully this weather outside will curb some of that. Our staffing levels are doing okay. I'm not going to say they're doing great. When this report was prepared, we had 6 out of the 9 positions actually working in a full-time position. We're up to 7 now, so that's good news for the town. We still have a few members that are off for various reasons, and that's kind of the trend with the rural members and the Picture Butte members as well. So we're doing okay. We're able to make sure our members are safe and provide adequate coverage. However, if we ever could get all our members working, we could be able to do a lot of more proactive things for sure. The financing, I know that your CAO and CFO have been in contact with our financial people in K Division, having some good discussions on invoicing and that sort of thing, and I trust, I'm not a financial expert, but I trust they have that in order, and I think they're getting the answers they need from our finance people in Edmonton. So we'll continue to work hard with that. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone at the town here for letting us be involved in your open house and letting me do a little bit of a presentation. I think it's important for the community to have that opportunity. Attendance, it is what it is. I mean, people will show up if they want to, and I think the 2 years we've done it, it's beneficial. We get to hear from some concerned citizens, and I can take that back and develop our plan for next year. So I look forward to doing that again every October here if we can, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together. If there's any questions at this time, I'd be happy to try and answer them or follow up if I can't.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for our Staff Sergeant? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Staff Sergeant, for attending tonight and updating council and our public who are watching tonight on the work that you're doing. I wanted to thank you so much for some of the work that you are doing in various areas, and one of them that I made note of was foot patrols. Would you be able to just help me envision what you're defining with foot patrols?
Sure. So part of that community involvement is getting out and walking the main street. I wouldn't say we have a lot of time to do foot patrols in neighborhoods unless there's a problem area, but certainly this summer I know myself and my sergeant were walking several times up and down. We stopped for pancake breakfast at the senior center, those types of things. It's just more community involvement and just one other way that we like to be involved and be visible. I think it kind of shocks people to see us actually walking down the road, or bike patrols. We also saw some of that in the community this summer as well.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I personally as well, I've noted your presence in the community in a number of ways, and I think that our community, if they get out and about and see where you patrol, obviously they would know very well that you are present in Coaldale. I also wanted to thank you as well for putting the bike rodeo together and or helping with that bike rodeo concept and developing it. One of the things that I envisioned with our manager of community policing, Mark Anderson, and at a previous council meeting was the idea of doing an RV inspection. And obviously, with RVing being such a popular recreational item in the spring, summer, and fall, there would be a great opportunity for inspections so that RV owners can bring their RVs by and see how the paperwork is done, ensure that they're safety for travel in other provinces, and then maybe even if Prairie Sky RV came by and did mechanical, as well, so that it all builds a great big picture. In the past, it has been done, and so I think in the last number of years it's been abandoned, obviously with capacity issues, but I would certainly like to see that resurrected again. My final question with regards to one of your quarter crime statistics in Coaldale on page, I guess on our page it'd be 137 of 195. So when you're speaking about total persons, we're talking about theft of motor vehicles, theft under 5,000 and so on, possession of stolen goods and fraud and arson and so on. Our citizens on patrol that we're trying to create and build, actually we've created it, but we need to build it. Would that help kind of with some of those numbers, even though they're not allowed to be involved in any of that, but just more of a presence in the community would help alleviate some of those issues and deter some of those numbers?
Absolutely. To answer your question, if once the word gets out that there's people out watching the neighborhood, like a block watch or citizens on patrol, word travels, and they will know, those being the people that are committing crimes or thinking about committing crimes, that they better be careful or they better go somewhere else, because they don't want the hassle, they don't want the bother, for sure. It also helps your community kind of come together and be a little bit proactive and feel like they're making a difference. And in other communities, for example, Ponoka, I know they still have a very active COP program. Very active, but a very small group of people that are dedicated to the program. And I think that's what, I'm hoping that we'll be able to find here, is that small group to start. And it doesn't mean that people have to be out 24/7 all the time, but it's, a shift a week, a shift a month, whatever they can do, whatever they can possibly help out with would be appreciated. And it does help. It's an extra set of eyes for us. We can't be everywhere. And they have a vested interest, so they want to help.
Thank you. Just one final question, if I may, Mayor. With regards to publicity or public, not so much public relations, but just reporting, say, for example, in the Sunny South News, I remember in years past, the R.C.M.P. would report activities and I guess some successes or some results or whatever is going on in the community. Is that something you're still working on here in Coaldale with the Sunny South News?
Yeah, I have a good relationship with Erica. As it stands now, I believe she goes to court on certain cases that involve the community. We are not providing her a report or a detailed report of our week or our month. I know some communities have done that. It's very time consuming to do that. I'm not saying that it's not beneficial even to do once a month or hit the highlights. We've talked, she's always open to doing kind of any story that we want to push through, whether it's safety or public awareness or some education or just a good news story where we actually solve the crime and charges relayed, those types of things. So we're trying to do that. I know that they also have a certain amount of space that they have in their paper, so sometimes it's a capacity thing, but we certainly can, if it's a matter of getting that information, and we have to be careful on what information we release, but getting any information, even the stuff that we spoke about last week, that Carolyn presented on. Not everybody probably watched that presentation, but if we could put snippets into the paper about how to protect your home, what to look for, those types of things, I think that'd be beneficial as well.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Are there any other questions for our staff sergeant? Again, thank you very much, Mike, for coming to the open house. Again, based on the numbers that were in attendance, everybody must be happy, and we take that as a good sign. I've had some follow-up emails from people that attended and wanted some more information, and they found it to be a very interesting presentation that yourself gave along with Carolyn. So thank you again for that. Also, our citizens on patrol that Councillor Chapman brought in, we have a good core group signed up. We have some retired R.C.M.P members, Medicine Hat police members that live in Coaldale that want to participate. So I want to set up a meeting here in the next couple of 3 weeks, and then I'll send an email as far as our liaison officer to see if we could work it out that either yourself or whoever you choose to be the liaison officer moving forward. And then our COP provincial rep, Kimberly Hurst, I'll get her down as well, just so that we can kind of have a kickoff meeting and then start checking off the boxes that need to be done moving forward.
That would be great. One suggestion, if you have people who are committed already, have them come down and do that criminal record check, because that's what takes a little bit of time, and we can kind of get that rolling so that people don't lose interest. Which
Yes. Okay, that's on my to-do list for this week. Any further questions? Seeing none, I need someone to make a motion that the Q1 report by Staff Sergeant Mike Numan be adopted as information. Deputy Mayor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Moving on to agenda item 8.3, the Coaldale Senior Center request for financial assistance. Our municipal clerk put together a staff report on that. And basically, the letter states that they want to do some upgrades on the senior center. And they wrote a letter addressed to myself and council looking for opportunities on how they can seek financial assistance. So what we're going to do is try and find some granting opportunities for them that we can apply for to help them get those grants sent in and ultimately approved. And Councillor Beekman over at the library, we need to do the same thing with that building. They're in need of upgrades as well. So I'll talk with Russ on this, on what kind of grants are available, and we'll work on putting some together on that. Are there any questions, comments on that agenda item? Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Have they a budget, like they don't have a budget for doing maintenance on that building every year? And right now, according to that letter, it's like if they have a fixture go down, they're not going to be able to replace it. Is there anywhere in the town's operating budget we can find maybe and get a true estimate on this so that they can start moving forward?
In answer to the first comment about if a light goes out, there's still parts available for those ones.
Okay.
And that's something that we need to work towards. So Russ, if you want to come up to the presentation table, please. Question I got for you then further to Councillor Pickering's comment. We look after the maintenance for that facility, I assume?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We do look after the maintenance for that facility. We do have some facility funds that we can use for these types of things, certainly not to cover that large amount of expenditure. However, we were and have been in contact with them about this particular issue. The quote that they got was through us, and we have applied for the New Horizon for Seniors Capital Grant. We find out in February if we got that. If we do, it's not a matching grant, it'd be fully funded. So we are looking into that, but they're also, Lana's got some good ideas about even some backup opportunities too, so.
And then also, while I got you, Russ, we can do something similar for the senior center as well then?
So that was, sorry, to clarify, that was for the senior center that the grant has already been applied.
I'm sorry, the library.
Yes, there are other opportunities and other initiatives out there for grants as well, both for the library and another one that's been on the horizon or certainly on our radar for a few years is the arena as well. The low E ceiling and the lighting in the arena is still the metal halide. So.
Would it be fair to ask then that you could reach out to the president of the Coaldale Senior Center, Brian Brown, and let him know that we're going to work on this then?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And the same thing goes for the library. Any further questions? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I was just reflecting on the comments. So are we going to go ahead and get this done for next year as requested, or are we going to wait till we get a grant? I'm just wondering. I know that in years past that, and just speaking about the seniors, they hardly ever come to council asking for money, and they try to do a lot of fundraising on their own and have bought a number of items through grants and either sponsorships or grants or just fundraising on their own. But in the meantime, there are certain items in the building that really are should be a town responsibility, in my opinion. And so I honestly think that we should really think deep about adding this to our budget line for next year, to add this into the budget line for the senior center as an expense.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Chapman. Some of the things so in February we'll know if we're successful for this grant. And if we aren't, that's still ahead of the community grant opportunity that certainly they could apply for as well. And then, and Lana, and this is, I won't take credit for that, but Lana's suggested these avenues. There's also a community foundation grant out there as well. So there are some options. It's nice to be able to go after, probably the easiest way to say this is right now lights and the changing of lights, especially to efficiencies, are low-hanging fruit for funding. And so if we spend out of our pocket for this $25,000 when there's a really good chance that we can get a grant for it, there may be a better way of doing that. And so that's what we're going to make every effort to try to do so. We've done it in a number of facilities already, and we hope to keep checking more off that list. But there are grants available out there, and they're rolled over pretty regularly. It's only a matter of time, in my opinion, before we get a grant rather than spending $25,000 that could be used elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Fair enough. I appreciate that. And thank you too as well, Russ, for ensuring that the entrance roof be done this year, and they really appreciate that.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, then I'll need a motion that council receive the senior center correspondence for information and defer the financial request until budget deliberations. Anybody care? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Reis has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. My question is, so if we're going to defer the financial request until the budget deliberations, what happens with the grants then that we're trying to get?
We will still pursue granting opportunities.
So should we amend that then?
The granting opportunities are over and above this, so we don't need that to be included in the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Pickering makes a motion that council receive the senior center correspondence for information and defer the financial request until budget deliberations. Any further discussions on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8.4, tree for holiday season in the Civic Square Atrium. We have our Community Services Program Coordinator Clayton Varjassy presenting. Clayton, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So the objective of this is to provide council with the opportunity to choose a tree size, type, and location for the holiday season inside Civic Square Atrium, if that's the desire for this holiday season. So I won't go through everything in this report, but there's a few factors to take into consideration: price, size, location, timing, and type of tree being the primary factors. Regarding price, we'll get into that in a little bit, but it ranges quite significantly, $1,000 to about $25,000 for trees that would fit within the atrium. A general type, real or artificial. I didn't really touch on real in the report. So in Alberta, if you want to cut down a real tree, you can get a permit from the government to do that, a personal permit, but it's limited to 8 feet. And I don't think an 8-foot tree in here is the right height, but that is an option if you guys want to consider that. Artificial subtype, commercial grade or consumer grade. We'll get into that, into the pricing. Pre-lit or non-lit, and then the location. So I've identified 2 locations inside of Civic Square Atrium, one being that northwest corner. One thing to take into consideration there, though, is that is the location that potentially could have like a little coffee shop or something like that in the future. Or the southwest corner as the other location, or another location is an option. Regarding price, a 14-foot pre-lit commercial tree from Decrolite. Now, Decrolite's the same company that we've bought a lot of our LED lights for Winter Walk in the Park from. They're a solid company, and they're based out of Vancouver, I believe, somewhere in BC at least. And so a 14-foot tree is $10,125 from them, and 18-foot is $17,850, and a 20-foot is $22,950. They do tout that as being the safest tower tree on the market, having self-shaping branches, dual-tone emerald and forest green branches with tan specks, UV-treated foliage, pre-lit with warm white LED mini lights, and it's the first tower tree to be approved by registered structural engineers, and has CSA approved electrical components. So those are kind of some of the things you get with more of a commercial grade tree over a consumer grade. Just to summarize pricing, if you're looking at around that 14-foot range, you can get decent options anywhere between $700 and $3,000. Once you go bigger than that, you can maybe get up to about 15 feet, potentially 16 if it's like a slim tree. But once you go bigger than that into the commercial grade, you're looking at around that $15,000 mark as a starting price. And so in regards to size, the northwest corner over there, the ceiling height is 15 feet 11 inches, and the light fixture is roughly 8 to 12 inches deep. So that area could realistically accommodate a 14-foot tree decently well. And it does face Main Street, the windows in that area, above 5 feet though, because there is kind of an area there that has no windows. And then the southwest corner, the ceiling height to the acoustic clouds is 22 feet 3 inches, and there's light fixtures in that area as well. In my mind, I think an 18-foot tree would fit nicely in there. I think 20 feet might be getting a little high to the ceiling, but it's up to you guys to decide. In regards to timing or some of the key considerations, so the outdoor space is currently under construction. And with the indoor space, indoor Civic Square space still in its infancy, I believe that if we add 1 or 2 more seasons as the area matures and more data on rentals, we may be better equipped to make a decision, especially if council wanted to spend a significant amount of money on a tree. And space is another key consideration. While the tree is up, it'll be occupying some valuable space in the atrium. Right now in that northwest corner, we have our tables and chairs. In the southwest corner, we have some tables there. That corner doesn't have as much though in it right now, but it is space that's typically used during rentals. So it could also impact rentals. If we get a large tree, like 18 feet or above, we'd likely need the lift to take it down. So if there was a rental that wanted that tree down, then we would need to bring in the lift. So realistically, it's not ideal to have to take it down. So if we did put it in, we'd probably want it to be something that's in there for the season. For the larger tree at least. And then cost, just that the larger tree is quite a bit more money, but it would undoubtedly be more impactful. Financial impact, so there's operating, capital, and staff time are all included in there. Once a tree is purchased, there will be an ongoing operational cost pertaining to the decorations and staff time to set up and take down. The capital expenditure will depend on town council's decision. Options above $5,000 would need to be considered a new capital expenditure with a dedicated funding source, while options under $5,000 could be absorbed within the existing community services operating budget. Should council be willing to select an option with a cost impact in excess of $5,000, the following funding source is suggested. Community Services Operating Reserve. The current balance is $15,351. Please note this reserve is not contributed to annually, so once it's spent, it's gone unless council chooses to replenish it. Stakeholder engagement, aside from just verbally discussing this with some members of council and staff, there has been no formal engagement with the public. So I've got 4 decision options outlined here, but feel free to amend as you see fit or to add your own. Option 1, that council defer the purchase of a tree for Civic Square until the completion of the outdoor phase of Civic Square, just to get a better idea of how the whole space is when it's all done. There are a lot of these commercial grade trees are indoor outdoor, so there's the option to have an outdoor tree as well. Option 2, the council approves a budget of up to $3,000 for the purchase of a 14-foot artificial tree to be located in the northwest corner of the Civic Square atrium. This budget is to include any necessary lighting, decorations, and skirting. Option 3, that council approves a budget of up to $25,000 for the purchase of an indoor-outdoor 18-foot artificial tree to be located in the southwest corner of the Civic Square atrium. This budget is also to include any necessary lighting, decorations, and skirting. Option 4, that council provide administration with additional direction as they see fit.
Thank you, Clayton. Couple of questions before I open it up to council. Like the renovations that we're going to be doing inside of Civic Square with the additional storage room that we're going to be adding, that's going to be starting, and I can throw that out to our CAO as well, as far as when that is planning to be taken on. Kaylin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The scope of work is out for quotation as we speak. So the purchase agreement has been finalized and the design package has been prepared. The code review has been undertaken in consultation with the architects and the building code contractor that we utilize. And so now we're in the process of obtaining competitive quotations for the work. I'll be able to report back probably later this week on what the details are for timeline following the closing date.
So if you were to take an educated guess, talking to to shift, would that be this year yet, you think, or would that be into the new year?
Our hope is that work will commence sometime in the month of November. It's difficult to forecast when that will be complete. I don't believe, and I don't think we're anticipating that it'll be complete prior to Christmas.
Okay, thank you. So further to that, like you mentioned, Clayton, the tables and chairs, like once we have that storage room ready for us, then we have a place to put this tree as well. And I'm all about, if you're going to buy a tree, you may as well get one that fits the space. So I like the idea of the larger one. We have to find funds for that. And for myself, I think it's a bit premature to start looking at spending that kind of money until we have the space 100% complete. And same with the outside. I like your idea. Maybe it can go outside as well. With that being said, a question for you. The tree that's at the Gem of the West Museum, do you know if they're having any Christmas programs this year? Like, are they going to do that concert and stuff again? Have you heard anything about that?
I don't know, no.
Okay. Because, and Councillor Chapman can answer that question too, because last year it was held at one of the churches, correct?
Thank you, Mayor. The concert this year will be held at the Canadian Reformed Church by Home Hardware.
So I think that was the only Christmas function that the museum had, other than they had maybe a couple of open houses where people could purchase tables and sell their homemade artisan items. So not to take away the tree from the museum, but if they're not using it, could we borrow that for this season to put it up in here if they're not having any functions? Because I think it would be quite impressive to have that tree, and I think that's a 12-footer, if I'm not mistaken, 10 or 12. It might be nice to have that in here if the museum is okay with us borrowing that.
Yeah, I can definitely talk to them about that. And there is another tree that we put up in the arena for the glow skate that could potentially come here as well, and it's probably a similar size to that.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open it up to members of council. Any questions for our presenter, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe through to Clayton. Thanks for putting this together. Speaking in favor of option number one as well. Just for the future, and you know, I don't know if your staff are going to have a bit of a decorating party for dressing up the atrium and your upstairs and that. I'm sure that you probably have some ideas about tastefully decorating it for yourselves and for public use. Like you say, if there's going to be rentals and that it might be something to look at. So we might have some other stuff around. And did we not have a tree at the old town office before? I just kept, maybe Lana might be able to answer that question. Not that we have to spend all night searching for trees, but you know.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a tree at the town office, but it was it was quite aged, I'll say, and I don't know if we actually kept that because it was very old and it didn't even have built-in lighting or anything on it. It was.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Saylor.
Thank you, through to Clayton. You said that we don't have many events here this winter. Like, there's not much going on this winter, you said?
Inside Civic Square Atrium?
Yes.
There's Night of Lights for sure, like as a town event. Aside from that, not for town events. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could probably wait too, in my opinion. Do you happen to know if any of these commercial places do Boxing Day sales and all that on Christmas trees?
I don't, but I can definitely keep an eye on it.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, I think a lot of times I know after Christmas, all these trees, department stores and everything go on quite a bit of a sale. I don't know if a commercial one would, but might be worth a look.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further questions, comments for our presenter? So before you, as Clayton mentioned, we have 4 options that we can choose from. Is there any appetite for anybody to sponsor one of those? Councillor Chapman.
Move to make a motion to approve, to defer as in option number 1.
There's a motion on the floor that council defer the purchase of the tree for the Civic Square until the completion of the outdoor phase of Civic Square. Would that be accurate to capture your intent? Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Clayton. Moving on to agenda item 9.1 under departmental reports. We have Protective Services Quarter 2 and Quarter 3 report. We have our Director of Protective Services and Fire Chief Clayton Rutberg presenting. Clayton, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just from one Clayton on to the next tonight for you guys. So looking at our Quarter 2 and 3 reports for Coaldale District Emergency Services and CDME. Our fire service calls, so just looking at our 5-year trend for our call volume. Currently we're at 512 calls as of the end of September, at the end of Quarter 3. These are all running stats throughout the year as well, so it incorporates right up to the end of Quarter 3, with 290 of those being medical and 222 being fire related. Our calls by month have remained fairly consistent throughout 2023, quite similar to what we've seen in 2022. Our call types, as you can see, the majority of our call types, or our largest call piece anyway, is medical, followed by motor vehicle collisions, alarms, and then getting into the various types of fires such as our wildland, building, and vehicle fires as well. One thing I will mention with our call types, unfortunately, just with our records management system as I was putting this report together, I didn't have our code red data for the second and third quarter. We were sitting at 11 in quarter number 1, but we should have that coming up here fairly quickly, and we'll include that in our Quarter 4 report. Just off the top of my head, it is down significantly compared to last year, though. Our time on calls throughout 2023 so far, we've spent 329 total hours, and that's not our man hours, but that's how long we've been on calls as a department. Our fire services calls throughout our different call areas. So 58% of our call volume has been in the town of Coaldale, which represents 295 calls. 136 in our primary response district in Lethbridge County, and then 70 in the expanded area, which has been 14% of our call volume this year, with 2% being our mutual aid, with 11 mutual aid calls. One thing I will note, it's into Quarter 4, but since this report was completed, we've had another 42 calls, so we're up to a total of 554 to date. With our training, we're fairly busy throughout Quarter 2 and Quarter 3. Just some highlight pictures of some of those. But some of the things we've done throughout those quarters, we had 2 people attend Big Rig HOTS training, 4 people attend Nozzle Forward, which was hosted in Lethbridge. We had 4 people attend FDIC, 2 of which were sponsored by the association and 2 by the town of Coaldale. We had 3 people attend the Lethbridge Fire Heart of a Hero event, which is kind of on cardiac arrest calls and some of the successes around that. 4 people completed grain rescue awareness courses. 3 completed the 1001 Level 1, which was our recruits from the last recruitment. And we currently have a 1001 Level 2 and 1041, which is fire instructor, in progress. Our weekly training throughout Quarter 2 and 3 was focused on pump operations and nozzle work, motor vehicle collision refresher training, rural water supply early on in the spring prior to fire season getting going, search and rescue techniques, firefighter survival, our live fire evolutions, trying to make sure that we remain consistent and get guys into a tower time with live fire. Medical familiarization, and our flammable gas and liquid training. So to date, we've had 1,392 hours of training, which is fairly consistent with our previous years as well. Our fire prevention, public education, again, these are our running stats. We've had a total of 20 fire investigations this year up till the end of September, with a few more here coming up in this quarter already. Fire inspections, we've had 83 completed, as well as pre-plans, we've had a total of 60 completed. So this is a new component for us this year with our records management system. Before we had very little pre-planning prior to this year, and we're up to 60 already. And really what that includes is our fire prevention officers going through the building, identifying everything from building layout to hazards in the building, to where stuff like electrical panels are located, so that we can pull it up on our iPads when responding to a structure and easily be able to mitigate any hazards that are present. Our burn permits, this represents permits that we've approved either in the town of Coaldale or Lethbridge County. As you can see, with the majority of those being in Lethbridge County. This also only represents Class 2 permits, which are flagged by their system and require our approval or a site visit before they're allowed to actually burn. And then home fire safety, we've had a few smoke detector checks and one home fire safety inspection request that we've completed. A few other things that our fire prevention officers have been involved in. We've had a lot of requests for fire extinguisher training this year, and so far I've had over 100 public members complete that training, which includes the practical as well as a theory piece. We've had a number of station tours. Looking to date today, I think we've had up to 32 station tours from various groups, such as schools, Girl Guides, those types of things, where we've conducted formal tours of the fire hall, obviously not including our open house. A few other things that our fire prevention officers have been heavily involved in: emergency response plan review for facilities that have to have emergency response plans in place. These are oftentimes higher hazard facilities, chemical storage, things like that, as well as continuing to progress our lockbox program so that we have access to buildings with fire alarms. Just taking a look at a little bit of our weekend and evening shift coverage, with that having started back in July of this year. Our shifts have been pretty good for our weeknight shifts and significantly lower for our weekend coverage. This is the program where we can have 2 firefighters signed up for a night shift, or on the weekend there's days and nights available, as well as on statutory holidays. Typically times where we don't have all our full-time staff at the hall. So quite a bit better uptake on the weeknight shifts, not so much on the weekends, which I think is just a big result of the amount of time that our people do give up. And a little bit easier to give up a weeknight evening night versus time on the weekends as well. We're looking to explore some different options internally and just figure out how we can improve that coverage as well. One thing I will bring up before I move on to the municipal enforcement side. We did have a meeting with our Emergency Services Committee in the beginning of October here, where we kind of went through a workshop with our level of service and our fire services bylaw. So those 2 documents should be coming back to council hopefully here in November for approval and stuff as well. After the meeting, we just had a few edits to go through and finish reviewing, and that should be coming back pretty soon.
Clayton, just before you move on, I just wanted to open up to council. Are there any questions for Clayton on the fire side? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to the one slide for medical responses. We keep hearing they're down. When you work it out to percentage, last year might have been a bit of an anomaly because it's 5% higher than our average. So we're averaging 57, 58% of our call volume is still medical calls. So the advocacy seems to be being pulled back a little bit from us as elected officials. But looking at your data, it's definitely showing, code red or not, 57% of the calls that we're accountable for through the emergency services are still first response ambulance calls. Is that correct?
The one big thing, I've looked a lot into the medical calls this year, and it seems like they're on pace. Even after Q1, I think we were one call different. The thing that I've noticed significantly different statistically is how many of those would be a first response versus co-response. A lot more of the calls were showing up at the same time as EMS or after EMS on like a Delta or an Echo call versus last year we had a lot more calls, even though it might not be a code red, where we would arrive significantly prior to the ambulance, just with the core flex versus 12-hour shifts. So I would say that that number has remained fairly constant. The other piece would be, as well as our call volume has kind of dropped in our normal area, because we do have 70 additional calls in that expanded area. So I don't know if last year was just a busier year, but just looking more into that to see kind of where those calls are is for sure on our radar.
Okay, so as a follow-up then, is there value added to our department still responding if EMS is already on scene? What's the added value? Is it just for the call volume, or is it actually assisting the EMS crew that's on scene?
I'd say in the most part, a lot of them are assisting the EMS crews. There's still that severe Delta Echo. One thing to look at would be with our response types now that we've established a little bit more where things are at, or what type of calls are we still going to, and can we dial that back on certain types of calls that maybe before we needed to attend just due to possible wait times that maybe now that we don't have to attend.
So further to Councillor Avery's question, what you just brought up, Clayton, how many times do we respond where as soon as they get on scene, they get turned back because they're not required?
It has gone up significantly this year, which again I think is kind of hand in hand with that core flex to the model that they're working now with their 12-hour shifts. I would say it's probably about a 25 to 30%.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Clayton before he carries on? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So now I'm going to go to the slide of fire prevention and public education. It's good to see those numbers on the rise. I'm just a little bit concerned that 70% of the work is being done in the town and 30% in the county. And I think it should be maybe the other way around with those positions. You know, I just need some more clarity of why more is being done in the town of Coaldale than the county.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say as well, not all the inspections are all necessarily done by those positions either. There's been, especially this year with just our staffing levels from kind of that February, March on, there's been a significant shift in workload for our fire prevention officers with a lot of response and other duties having to be shuffled around. I think one of the things that stands out is just how much time and effort goes into a response from that perspective. As much as they are fire prevention officers in our makeup of our department, they spend a lot of time responding to calls as well.
We have a question, comment from our CAO. Go ahead, Kaylin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Avery's triggered a couple of quick questions for me. Starting with the medical calls. Do we or can we track the average amount of time that the AHS EMS buses arrive after we arrive? / can we mark down whether they are there before us? And then how much time on average do we spend assisting them on that medical call? Because I think having this information over a year period will greatly assist how we pursue different advocacy discussions with the province going forward on that file. And then the other question is in terms of time spent. I'm just getting back to slide number 6 with time on calls. There's 16 hours mentioned for mutual aid. Are most of those in other jurisdictions within Lethbridge County?
So your answer to question 1, yes, that's actually one of the things that we're looking at having tracked and wanting to actually put into play for our Q4 year-end report for 2023 is more of an analysis on that. It was just working with our service provider for a record management system to make sure they can get the formulas in to extract all that without having to manually go through each call. And sorry, I forgot your second question.
It's in regards to time on calls. So if I add up the pie chart, close to 58% of the time that we spend on calls takes place in the Lethbridge County jurisdiction. So just looking at the variable of time, operationally we spend more than 50% of our time on county calls.
Yes, that's correct. So the majority of our time on calls is spent in the county, whereas our town calls are typically a little bit lower. And that's usually seen historically as well throughout the years that we spend a lot more hours, or not a lot more, but our call volume is always higher in town, but our hours are always higher in the county.
Okay, and then my final question on the fire prevention and public education slide. That is an interesting contrast between the time chart there between Coaldale and county. Is this in part because Coaldale pays 100% of an extra FTE? Is it that investment in resources that allows us to proportionately spend more time on some of these prevention education areas? Or what would you say the reason behind that would be?
I think it depends on which aspect you're looking at. In the inspection aspect, some of it as well is the ease of going from business to business within the town. Whereas, you know, I might go down Main Street and be able to crank out 5 or 6 inspections within a short amount of time versus traveling around in the county as well. So it adds a little bit in that aspect, maybe not to the extent that you see there as well. A lot of our, and just to add to, a lot of our extinguisher training and stuff has been done for county businesses such as McCain's, Green Prairie, things like that in partnership with the county. So some of the pieces on there that might not have it attributed to where it's from add into that as well. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that it comes into it is the ease of access as well. With some of the stuff in the county, they spent a larger portion of the Q1 and into Q2 trying to figure out where things are at. We had a list originally from the county and some of the stuff we had done last year, but we still find new businesses all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pickering has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Through to Clayton. I just want a little bit of clarification on that mutual aid. Who is that for, or what is
So the mutual aid would fall into any of the calls that are outside of our jurisdiction. So the city of Lethbridge or Picture Butte, Colehurst, Nobleford, anytime they're calling for assistance from us.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Clayton. Staff Sergeant brought up a point about covering the air show. Was your department involved with the air show as well?
Yes, we provided coverage for the air show as well for the majority of it.
And what would be your time frame for, or your hours doing that, say, for example?
So it's basically the practice day. They're there for the entire day, as well as the 2 days of the air show. So this year we had a tender there on the practice day, and then an engine and a tender there for the remainder of the air show as well.
Okay, thank you. And just one final question about medical calls. So I didn't see any definition between medical calls and code reds. Are you putting them together as a total number?
We're still tracking the code reds. The only problem is we had an issue getting it out of our records management system here while pulling this report. Unfortunately, just with trying to get it together, I wasn't able to get a number together for quarter 2 and 3. In quarter 1, we did have 11. Quarter 2 and 3, I would say that number was probably fairly under what our quarter 1 was. We didn't have a lot of events that stood out, but we will have that exact number in our next report as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think from an earlier report, I do remember that the numbers of code reds had reduced significantly, and I think that was attributed to the new shift work that the EMS were encountering that they're really liking. So I think where I'm in agreement with council is the definition of medicals now is really kind of the new thing we have to discuss.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Okay, moving on, Clayton.
So looking at our Coaldale District Municipal Enforcement quarter 2 and 3 report. Unfortunately, Mark was away this week, so I'll be just doing all of it. Some of the significant highlights over quarter 2 and 3 throughout the majority of that time, aside from Mark working, they operated with one CPO. We did get the new staff member recruited. He is almost finished training and should be coming back to us here very shortly. May of 2023, we did have our 2 summer interns start. Unfortunately, we only had one throughout the summer and one left towards the end of June or mid-June. So it was a little late for that person to get replaced and brought up to speed to be able to keep 2 throughout the summer. So we operated with 1. Obviously, quarter 2, we had a busy time with unsightly properties being one of the biggest things, and we did have a large number of dog bite events in quarter 2 as well. Quarter 3 continued with the unsightly properties. We had a lot of dogs at large issues in quarter 3 as well. And one significant thing that I just wanted to highlight is we had a kind of a success story of ourselves with the fire department working very closely with our municipal enforcement to be able to ensure some animals from a medical call were taken care of and were able to get back home from somebody that was kind of passing through town. Without that teamwork, it would have been significantly harder to deal with that call. And then the bylaw intern positions that should say September 3rd, I believe, but concluded around September 3rd. It was a significant benefit to us throughout the summer with one individual that we did have as an intern. Occurrence reports. So throughout quarter 2, there was 151 reports completed. Quarter 3, 123. With our methods of reporting, you can see the throughout people coming in and reporting at the front counter remains fairly low. Email reports we get a few of, but not a significant amount. A lot of the reporting comes through phone or officer observed, and a small amount through online as well. Quarter 2, and I'll just touch on some of the highlights, but our community standards, which is pretty much represents at that time of the year our unsightly properties, as well as dog control, were the kind of the two larger issues throughout quarter 2. Looking at quarter 3, again, our prime time for unsightly properties remained fairly high, as well as a lot of dog-related issues in quarter 3 as well. Photo radar remained fairly consistent throughout quarter 1, 2, and 3, with 9 different locations being enforced throughout quarter 2 and 10 throughout quarter 3. And our average speed kind of hovering around that 19, 18 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. And that is kind of the summary for municipal enforcement.
Thank you, Clayton. Just before I open it up to council, I just want to back up to the unsightly premises. So I received another email last Friday regarding one reoccurring one that's just east of the old town office location. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about there. So can you just explain for council and our viewers at home the process on what it takes to get someone to clean up their yard?
Yes, absolutely. So once something like that is reported, it starts out as pretty much anything else with the education process, where our officers will be in contact with that person and try and gain that voluntary compliance to clean things up. If they're unsuccessful from that point, they have to go to the step of writing an order, which once they actually have written that order, they have to give that individual time yet again to make sure they have that opportunity to get things cleaned up before they can actually bring in a contractor to do that work.
So from the time that you get the phone call that there's a problem with this yard until the contractor arrives, what's that length of time?
Off the top of my head, I believe it's typically about 14 days from the time they do their go through voluntary to writing the order, and it sits with that order for, I believe it has to be 7 days.
And if they attempt to clean it up, then you close the file on that, and then if they re-offend, you start the whole process over again, because that looks like that's a recurring problem with that one I'm thinking about.
I believe they do. I know Mark was working on a process to be able to expedite that a little bit for some of the properties where they could go in under one cleanup order, the original cleanup order, and I believe they did implement that this summer for some of the properties as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to council. Any questions for Clayton? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following up a question by the mayor about unsightly premises. So what is the procedure for unsightly premises? Is it driven by complaint, or is it proactive work on behalf of the department?
They do have a significant amount of proactive ones, but the complaints definitely help as well.
Okay, thank you. 2 other questions. Number 1 here, under your quarter 2 incident types, you have business license bylaw. How does the department monitor business licenses?
They consistently get quarterly lists from our town staff. So a lot of that is through either communications with the town staff of businesses that they know don't have licenses, or our officers seeing that stuff when they're out and about off of the list as well.
Okay, thank you. And my final question with regards to photo radar, are you receiving any complaints about 20th Street at John Davidson as a speed reduction zone?
Sorry, just to clarify, complaints about enforcement there, or
Enforcement
like
or the
of
purpose of it?
the purpose of it? Not that I am aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions before we move on to Clayton's next report. Well, Councillor Reis has a question?
No more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. I don't have a question. I'm just making a motion that council receive the protective services quarter 2 and quarter 3 as information.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Councillor Reis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9.2, the Coaldale and District Emergency Services Years of Service and new volunteer recruits. Again, we have our Director of Protective Services and our Fire Chief presenting. Go ahead, Clayton.
Yeah, we just wanted to provide a little bit of insight to council with our upcoming awards banquet that we normally have that is coming up here in December. But just wanted to highlight some of our individuals that will be getting awards this year and that have put in a significant amount of time into the department, as well as our 6 new recruits that will be taking their oath of firefighter this year as well. So with 5 years, we have myself, our fire training officer Parker McGill, and Captain Steve Yankee. 10 years this year, we have Lieutenant Riley Roth, firefighter Conrad Van Bostelen, firefighter Brad Slingerland, and Lieutenant Greg Nishiguchi. And then with 25 years, we have Captain Brian Winters. And then we do have 6 new recruits from our last recruitment that will be taking their firefighter oath of office this year, which is Aaron McBaron, Brandon Capper, Jesse Groth, Dan Patterson, Blake Horanic, and Alfonso DeCoco.
Thank you, Clayton. Any questions, comments on that report? So before we let you go, I just wanted to mention that, pass it on to your staff, that the members of council and I that were able to attend your open house, that was very successful. The food was good. The demonstrations were excellent in the back. And yes, so pass on our high regards for an excellent job on that, and continue to keep doing the work you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I need a motion that council receive the Coaldale and District Emergency Services Years of Service and new recruits update as information. Councillor Beekman, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Clayton. Moving on to correspondence, we have 2 items under correspondence 11.1. Municipal Affairs letter of acknowledgement for a letter that we sent congratulating them on their new position, Minister Todd Loewen, and another letter from Minister Mickey Amory, and that was dated the end of August. Are there any questions or comments on those 2 pieces of information? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council receive the correspondence from Municipal Affairs as information? Deputy Mayor Saylor, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. So I will be requiring a motion to go into closed session in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for items 13.1, subject to section 21, intergovernment relations, section 24, subject to section 24, advice from officials, and items 13.2, subject to section 16, business interests of a third party, and section 27, privileged information. So I need a motion that we go into closed session at 6:34 PM. Who wants to make that motion? Councillor Beekman, any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll take a 10-minute break before we go into our next segment, and that'll be our organizational meeting. Thank you.